Hey everyone, and welcome back to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly fascinating, deeply complex global phenomenon, decoding the Indian diaspora, and specifically looking at exactly how overseas Indians view their homeland. It's a topic that is just incredibly rich with history, nuance, and massive global impact. So we're going to strip away the myths and get right to the reality of this transnational community.
Okay, let's start by just wrapping our heads around the sheer scale of this group. 35 million. According to official data from the Ministry of External Affairs, there are over 35 million people of Indian origin living overseas right now. We're not just talking about a couple of large neighborhoods in a few Western cities. No, this is a massive, widely diverse population spread across more than 200 countries. It is, without a doubt, one of the most significant and influential diaspora communities on the planet. So here is our roadmap for today. 1. A 35 million strong diaspora. 2. Cultural ties and economic pride. 3. Complex views on democracy. 4. How generations shape perspectives. And 5. Embracing dual identities. All right, let's jump right into part 1, a 35 million strong diaspora, mapping the global footprint. Before we really get into the weeds, we need to talk about where our data is actually coming from. For an explainer like this, we're relying on robust, top-tier data from some serious global institutions. Think of them as our detectives. We're using official numbers from the Ministry of External Affairs, in-depth attitude surveys from the Carnegie Endowment, remittance and migration data from the World Bank, plus comparative research from the OECD and the Pew Research Center. So everything we're about to explore is grounded in very solid, authoritative evidence. So what actually binds this vast group together? Let's move to part 2, cultural ties and economic pride, which is really the unifying thesis here. For so many overseas Indians, the country remains a powerful emotional and cultural home, even if they left decades ago. You see this in the vibrant celebrations of festivals like Diwali, Eid, or Christmas. You hear it in the Indian languages being kept alive at the dinner table. And let's be real, you definitely taste it in the enduring love for Indian cuisine, because absolutely nothing beats authentic home cooking. For first-generation immigrants especially, this deep emotional connection translates into regular visits back to ancestral villages and, quite frankly, massive economic remittances. And that intense cultural connection, it directly translates into a modern perspective on India's future. The 2024 Indian American Attitude Survey by the Carnegie Endowment actually found profound optimism about India's trajectory. For instance, nearly half of the Indian Americans surveyed approve of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership performance. The broader data shows a very strong belief that India's international standing has improved significantly over the past few decades. So you're looking at a community that is just incredibly optimistic about India's economic and geopolitical rise.
Now, this optimism is fueled by some very specific, very modern achievements. Overseas Indians feel an immense sense of pride watching India transform into a true technological and global powerhouse. They're pointing to things like Indian origin CEOs running massive global tech companies, the historic Chandrayaan space missions, and India's undeniable dominance in IT. And it's not just tech. India's digital public infrastructure, things like the UPI payment system and Aadhaar, along with their massive global vaccine production, have completely reshaped the country's image abroad. It's no longer seen as just an outsourcing destination, but as a major innovation hub. But as you can probably guess, a group of 35 million people is going to have some diverse opinions. Which brings us to part 3, complex views on democracy, the antithesis of a monolith. Academic survey evidence shows us that despite all that shared cultural pride, the political and social views within the diaspora are actually highly fragmented. On one hand, many diaspora members hold a deep, deep admiration for India's democratic traditions. They praise the universal adult franchise, the regular peaceful transfer of power, an active civil society, and independent bodies like the Election Commission. But on the flip side, significant minorities within the diaspora express real concerns. These academic surveys capture worries regarding political polarization, the preservation of religious freedom, majoritarian politics, and institutional independence. So the ideological spectrum of the diaspora basically mirrors the vibrant, complex spectrum you'd find within India itself. You see this exact same duality when it comes to daily governance and infrastructure, which paints a very realistic picture of what a visiting diaspora member actually experiences. When they visit, they are frequently blown away by the rapid digitization of government services, the sheer ease of UPI-based mobile payments, and all the new airport and highway construction. Yet, they simultaneously notice persistent challenges. They report concerns about urban congestion, local corruption, bureaucratic delays, and environmental issues like air pollution. It's a very nuanced view, right?
Rapid progress is acknowledged right alongside ongoing infrastructural hurdles.
So, looking at this complex mix of intense pride, critical observation, and deep cultural connection, we have to ask a fundamental question. Why do views differ so wildly within the exact same diaspora? Like, how can two people living in the same foreign city hold completely different views of India?
The answer largely lies in the mechanics of migration and time. Let's explore part 4, how generations shape perspectives, unpacking the why. If you look at the timeline of a diaspora's mindset, you see a very clear shift. For the first generation, the connection is direct and visceral. India is physically home because they actually live there. But move to the second generation, and India represents more of a strong cultural identity. They have less personal experience living in the country day to day. And by the time you reach the third generation and beyond, India often serves as a proud ancestral or heritage identity. Their interest might be sparked by travel or food, but the lens through which they evaluate Indian politics or economics is just completely different from their grandparents.
And beyond just generations, when and why someone migrated changes everything. A post-1960s IT professional who moved to Silicon Valley evaluates India largely through the lens of technology, education, and economic reform. Contrast that with Gulf migrants, whose immediate focus is often on family ties, remittance policies, and employment conditions. Then you have historic communities in places like Fiji or Mauritius. These are families who left generations ago but maintain an incredibly strong traditional cultural connection. And finally, recent students who are actively comparing India's immediate career opportunities with those in their host countries. Their distinct, personal histories fundamentally wire their modern perspectives.
So, how do they reconcile their life abroad with their roots? This brings us to our final section, Part 5, Embracing Dual Identities, the Ultimate Synthesis.
The ultimate takeaway here is that holding complex views about your country of origin while building a life in a new country is not a contradiction at all. Many overseas Indians proudly describe themselves using compound identities: Indian American, British Indian, Indo-Canadian, or Singaporean Indian. Rather than seeing these identities as some sort of tug of war, they view them as entirely complementary. They integrate into their host societies, they contribute to their local economies, and they participate in local politics, all while keeping a very vibrant thread connected directly to their Indian heritage.
When you distill all the academic research, the World Bank data, and those comprehensive attitude surveys, it all brings us to this powerful concluding thought. The Indian diaspora tends to view India through a combination of identity, opportunity, and aspiration. They feel the intense pride of a rich civilizational heritage and rapid modern technological growth, while still maintaining the clear-eyed perspective required to recognize the ongoing challenges of a massive developing democracy. It's a highly engaged, multifaceted lens.
Which leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative question to ponder today. As India continues to rise on the global stage, how will this rapidly evolving, deeply divided, yet profoundly connected community of 35 million people shape India's global future? Will their remittances, their technological transfers, and their diplomatic influence accelerate India's rise in ways we haven't even seen yet? It is an absolutely fascinating space to watch. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.